So the first thing we're going to talk about VR games today. We're going to talk about VR games and what they mean to society in general, what's prevalent in the community, kind of in general, just what's going on in the VR realm right now. So do you know what the main VR headsets are that people are using nowadays? You know what they are?
No.
No, we got the Oculus Rift, we got the Oculus Rift S, which a lot of people are using. I think they just brought out a new version of that.
Really?
Yeah, they got the HTC Vive, which is Steam Valve's first party proper really high quality headset. It's got inside out tracking, I think, as well. I might be wrong.
Is it bad if I don't know what you're talking about at all?
It's not bad because that's what this podcast is all about. Somebody who knows a bit about games and somebody who doesn't. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Josh and this is Pratik, and that's just how it's gonna be. He's not too well versed with games, but I think just like most people, who are born in the 21st century, they've played video games in their life. And even if it just comes and goes throughout, it's just something that kind of involves in everybody's daily routine. No, it doesn't. It doesn't involve anyone's daily routine. It involves into a lot of people's daily routine, but it somehow finds its way into the life of every individual through advertising, movies, everything. And we're going to talk about VR today. That's what we're going to talk about, isn't it?
Video games find a way.
Video games find a way. So today we're going to talk about VR. We're going to start with one thing. Have you ever played VR, Pratik?
I've played with your VR.
You played with my VR?
Yes.
Well, where's my VR now?
You sold it.
I sold it because I am at school and I don't have a job. But that's irrelevant. The point is that we played VR, both of us actually. And I have quite a lot of experience with VR actually. I've been playing VR for about 2 years of just nonstop, just grinding it out. The funnest games I can find. A little bit expensive, obviously. That's probably the biggest problem. Why don't we start with that? That's got to be the biggest issue with VR. I think personally the biggest issue with VR nowadays still is the price tag. And I think that's a problem that we have to deal with as people who play games in general with every new technology that comes out, but especially VR nowadays. I mean, VR, how much is it costing? It's going to put you back minimum, if you want to buy it new, minimum, almost 250, 300 pounds. And before you sit there and go, well, the new Xbox is how much? How much? $399, $499?
Plus the games that you have to buy for it.
Plus the games you got to buy. Exactly. But the difference is that buying a VR is not the same thing, I would personally say, as buying a traditional console. Do you want to know why?
Why?
Well, because traditional consoles come with traditional games, and VR games are not the same as traditional games. You can't really jump in a VR game and expect that AAA experience you get from most modern games that come out on console nowadays.
I mean, do you really?
You really can't. No, it's impossible. But you don't know why? Because there's no one developing games. But do you want to know one game that's been developed for it?
What's that?
Half-Life Alyx.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it. I think most people haven't heard of it because it's such a niche thing. It's the highest. I don't know if it's the highest selling, but it's probably the most highest rated AAA VR game out there. If anything, it's the only AAA VR game that I know about personally, and that's just because I don't think any other ones would be considered AAA from the developers they're coming from. But do you want to know? Half-Life Alyx was created by Valve and is the latest Half-Life game in a very, very, very famous franchise. I think that most people can't get into that. Most people can't even buy into that new Half-Life game because VR is a little bit too expensive and it's too niche. It's not the next console. It's not the next generation. It's not even a half-step generation like the Xbox One S. It is just a considerably expensive and unique product that you can only get if you have a PC that costs twice the price of the headset itself.
Do you think in the future, when people look back and they look at the VR sets, they're gonna laugh at us and be like, "What were you guys trying to do with that?"
If you look back just a couple years now, I think what's it, like 20, 30 years? I don't know how exact the time that Nintendo created a virtual reality thing. I think it was called the Virtual Boy. They tried, exactly. It's called the Virtual Boy. Yeah, this little thing, you stick your little head in there, a little like, it's really low quality.
Damage your eyes.
Yeah, it really damaged your eyes. I think that they couldn't even I think there was like a thing saying like you couldn't use it if you were like under a certain age, like proper. I think the same thing with 3DS, but it's not the same as that. That was bad for your eyes, yeah. So they tried it. We look back at that and we think like, holy smokes, what's like?
but even
what are you thinking?
But even the VR sets that we have right now aren't. It's something that we look back at the old ones that we are laughing at now, but the ones that we have now is still something that's inspired from those things.
I agree with you. I think it's almost like looking at games that came out on the 360 where you think that they're like photorealistic, and then you look at games that come out now that are photorealistic, and you're like, oh, I thought those were photorealistic. So you look at the VR sets now and you think ooh, can't get much better than that. But then you're thinking, all right, but how about VR goggles? You know, they stick around my head, wireless. How about full body tracking, where you can move each individual finger, each individual limb, each individual everything.
What about lucid gaming?
Lucid gaming. What's that? Gaming in your sleep?
Yeah.
That would be a great idea.
I just came up with that, actually.
I don't know if you came. I saw something about that earlier today. I think lucid gaming is a cool idea.
Oh, shit.
But now that we're touching into those topics of getting into that futuristic thing, that brings us on to our next point of VR, which is, do you want to know the two most popular VR genres going out right now?
Porn.
Porn. Yeah, that's the first one. Nice one. Porn is the number one, I think, and number two. And the second one is horror. Horror and porn are the two main things, you know, VR gaming titles pertain to nowadays. The reasons I suspect, and I think you probably suspect at the top of your head as well, is probably because, you know, what are the two things that bring out the most feeling in your body, you know? You know, when you're scared, you know, you jump, you get those goosebumps, you know, you feel,
but
you know.
I mean, I agree with horror on that, but porn, really?
Well, the thing is with porn is that if you're playing a video game, let's say with a controller, and you're playing a game, I was going to use it for figures, but let's say you're playing a porn game. I mean, I don't even know if there's a porn game you can play with the controller. If there was, then Jesus. But let's say you're playing a porn game with your controller, right? Yeah. You're not really getting immersed as much as you'd get immersed if you had a screen that gives you a 360 view
or
of
a real girl.
Well, I mean, you know, there's a lot of issues in certain countries with that, where there's not they don't really need a real girl anymore. They just use their virtual girls, and it's a real thing.
That is sad.
It is a sad thing, but that's how it is.
It's what?
That's what I was saying. That's why our next topic is literally, will machines replace humans for love? For
not when it comes to stuff like this. Like,
you don't think so?
My love for a human, or say a human female, comes from. I know it's said and done that, oh, I've known her for this many years, and oh yeah, I love her for this or that, but primarily, like, we are all the primal instincts. We love, I'll love her because she is gonna give birth to my child, or, you know, like.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I also think that there's a lot of people who don't even, you know, identify with that whole entire, like, philosophy of wanting to have a kid in the first place, and don't even get to that point of thinking about having a kid, because they don't even think about having a girl. It's
not about having a kid. It's saying this is something that like is rooted in, she could or could not have your kid. Like, obviously. Yeah. All I'm trying to say here is, like, I'm obviously disagreeing with what you're trying to say, but I'm trying to find
you don't think that you think
I don't think machines can take over humans, or like replace other humans for us, like, with our willingness. If it happens, it has to be like Terminator style.
Yeah, I do think that we live in I do think we live in a world where our future will be somewhat replaced by robots in the department of love and possibly sex and things along those lines. And the reason I say that is because it's already happening. I mean, if you look at the world now and compared to 10, 20, 30 years ago, you know, the industry of selling sex robots and things along those lines is increased, like, exponentially. And that's because of VR. And you can see with any chart you'd like, there's a massive correlation with, you know, sex toys in terms of, like, automatic sex toys and virtual reality, and that's just something that's going to happen in the future. And I personally do think that in enough time, because it happens nowadays where people are starting to turn to that virtual relationship, I just think that maybe we are that last generation, and if not the first generation. I do believe there are people our age who do it, and even older.
Oh, hell
but
no.
I believe that really, in time, we are moving to that direction where I do think that we're going to be going from relationships with people in real life to the internet. And I think that that's because we've created these communities that we live in, these bubbles I don't live in, you don't live in, and I know you don't have a lot of experience with it, but I have a lot of people who I know genuinely who live in these communities online that's almost consume their lives.
This is actually hurting me, man.
Yeah, why is that? You're too traditionalist, huh?
Yeah, in a sense. I just can't. If you're talking about as a human in the future falling in love with a machine and deciding to spend it.
So do you find that ethically quite depressing? Like, is that something that you look?
Yeah, I think that's the right word. It's ethically depressing, if not. Yeah, that's something I'm not gonna say I look down upon, but something I don't understand.
Yeah, you don't understand, and I'll be honest with you here. I personally don't understand it either. But I'll tell you something that it is the future we do live in, and we do have to adapt. You know, if we're gonna want to sell products, if we're gonna want to do those things, we need to get to that point where we can come to terms with, yeah, not everybody needs an actual human in their life. Not everybody needs that warmth beside them. Some people just need that digital connection, and that's good enough for them. Personally, I think that might not last too long, but I also think that is where the future is heading.
Well,
may it be bleak, yes, but may it be
when
realistic.
When you say you think it's not gonna last long, isn't that the whole point?
I think that
making it last long.
Yes, because they want to make money, and I do think that I just think personally there will be a phase where things start to transition to that. I think we're in that phase where we're going to go from more traditional to almost going to the online things, and then I think there's going to be some big change. I have no basis on that, but I do think there'll be some sort of like revolution to an extent that starts to change the shift of where we go technologically. That goes a little bit from maybe something that went from a little bit more streamlined to something a little bit less streamlined.
If you're talking about this subject, it would make sense if the machines were trying to fill in the space for something that's not there. Say if all the men in the world disappeared or all the women in the world disappeared, it would make sense to fall in love with a machine that's been designed to act like a female, because we don't have any more females. But say females using these male robots and the males using these female robots, and like both of them still functioning together. Obviously you'll see other females, you'll see other males. Have you decided to totally cut yourself off, sexually at least, from these other creatures that are meant to be reproducing with each other? And is that not going to affect the social life?
I think it's going to affect the whole world's social life. I think that having a lot of men turn to VR porn or, you know, sex robots will lead to a lot of women having to do the same thing because they, you know, have less men to go out and see. And then I think that the other one will also cause the other one to go more. And I do think that's the case. But I think that there's a lot of cultures right now in the world where people just don't even speak to women. There's so many people who if you look at, I just think that,
are those cultures, or are they more like individual choices?
It's individual choice, but it's prevalent in certain cultures.
But then if it's an individual choice,
and it's not a culture thing, you're right. It's just in specific places in the world, they're suffering from a point of a lot of men are turning to virtual girlfriends and things like that. In that
case, if it like this thing grows more of as a hobby, sure, you have more things to choose with. But like, I don't think it can replace a human.
Well, I don't know. Well, yeah, I guess we get to that point of you don't think it's going to replace it. I also agree with you that it isn't going to replace it. But I do think it has a place in this world, in that it won't go away. I do think it's going to be some
like
stays.
There's a lot of things that are there that die eventually when no one is no further looking at them. You know what I mean? But they're still there.
Yeah, I personally don't ever think that a robot physically will be able to get to the point where it just replaces a human. But if I look long term into the far future, I genuinely do believe, and I don't think it's unrealistic at all.
How many years in the future is this?
Less than 50. There will be a one-to-one, almost perfect. In my opinion,
50 is too short. 50
sure.
is too short.
You see how we're exponentially growing into being.
How old are we gonna be?
We're gonna be 50. We're gonna be 50 years old, and we're gonna have 50-year-old. We're gonna have like 50-year-old robotic girlfriends, and we're gonna sleep with them and wear our VRs.
So you mean by 2050? So that's like 30 years, not even 50 years.
Yeah, 30 years. Yeah. I do. I think that by like at least 2050. I mean, the way I see it, like the way technology is advancing, there's no way they're not going to be able to get physical skin. They're not going to be able to replicate AI to an extent that's almost, that would pass a test to almost show that it could be human. I do think it will get to the point where it's almost impossible. And I say this because there are lots of apps. There are lots of apps that people use nowadays digitally to speak to somebody else, but it's an AI. And they talk to this AI as if they're friends. They genuinely do. And this isn't weird, this isn't odd, and I know that's what comes to your mind, and God, it kind of comes to mine too. I do think it's odd to develop a relationship with somebody that isn't a conscious being, but I'll tell you something. There are a lot of people who look to this app, this artificial intelligence, to give them that boost in the morning, to ask how their day is, to communicate how they're feeling, and that's actually something that people are turning to. I think emotionally people are becoming more reliant on technology, and I think that a lot of people emotionally are finding the answers to their emotional problems through an AI. And I think that's incredible, because I never would expect something like that to be solved for me.
I see some problems with that.
What do you see a problem with that?
The first is, say you have a robotic lover that I'm guessing you bought from the internet.
It's free. You can get it for. We'll talk about what we're talking about now, which isn't the robotic lover, but the AI friend. Okay. So the AI friend, you think it's a bad thing because?
I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's an incomplete thing. It's not a complete friend. If that makes sense. Like, say an AI friend that you probably bought from the internet, or it was free somewhere and you decided to try it out.
But if it's showing positive results on, I think we're getting to this point again where we're not separating your opinion.
If it's showing positive results on someone, then it is still experimental.
It's experimental, but for the people that it's working for, which is the majority of people who tend to use it, you know, you're not going to download it if you see an AI friend in the store. You know what I mean? So the people who are downloading an AI friend are probably looking for an AI friend. And I think that majority of people who use that app actually find some value in it in terms of helping them organize or talk about their problems.
Think about it. It's all these AI friends are also like 2020 versions of Talking Tom and stuff like that.
No, I disagree. I disagree completely. I disagree completely.
Or something.
I think that I think it's funny what you say. I do think you know, Talking Toms and stuff like that. But I do really genuinely think that it's completely different. You know, you look at Talking Tom. Talking Tom is, you know, you talk to it talks back to you with a funny voice that's like a...
but that's all we needed back then, right?
Yeah, that's all we needed because we were also...
we don't know what we're going to need
we were like 10 years old. And the thing is that what I'm saying is that this is a artificial intelligence that's that learns who you are and it figures out the things that you respond to, and it's a learning AI. It is artificial intelligence that is always learning to learn you and to learn how to almost please you, I guess, as a friend. It's not weird. It's not thingy. I think you're being a bit too skeptical and not looking at intellectually as how I'm trying to say, what is the future of this? Where is this leading? Are we looking at something where people are going to just literally sit in their rooms, you know, coronavirus level thing, where people are staying in their rooms and they're not even friends with real people anymore? They're just digitally talking to people. And then we move into VR, and then we move into these worlds where they're virtually talking to people in these virtual worlds. And then they're sitting in their bedroom wearing goggles that put them in a universe that talk to people who don't come from this universe. All digital, and then they go back, and then they go to bed. Now we got to take this next step. When is the point where we get to real jobs online and living in a genuinely 100% virtual world where you have a virtual life and a virtual social life? You know, when are we going to get to that point? Do you think that that's a possibility? Do you think that in the next 20 years, and I have something to say to this, but do you think in the next 20 years there will be people who will live their whole lives online? They wake up, they go in VR, and in VR they do jobs. And because of the jobs they do in VR, they make actual money to live, to pay their electricity bills, to continue doing the VR job, and then to play games in their spare time, have fun with their friends. So their friends are virtual, their life is virtual, and their jobs are virtual. Is that a future you think is real? You think that's something that can genuinely happen in the next 50 years?
If they're happy, it's up to them, man. But I think
do you think it's possible though? Like I think we all know the repercussions.
I'm sure there's some guy out there who's already doing it.
I was gonna say the same thing in my head. I was thinking that.
The thing is, I'm more concerned about his health in terms of he has literally cut himself out of this world.
Yeah. I think that's an important thing to think of as well. You know, what are the implications of long-term usage of a screen that close to your face, and you know, what is the effect on society itself whenever we allow these video games and the social
these are just short-term effects, and these are more that individuals should be concerned about in the long term. Think about it in the way that I'm exaggerating it, but people are gonna lose like communication skills over the time. Depends on if this thing does like become big or something like that. How is it gonna affect us as a community?
Yeah. You want to know something that's funny? You know, we're talking about jobs. We're talking about VR.
Yeah.
Do you want to know one of the main games that sells on VR? Do you want to know what it's called?
What's it called?
It's called Workplace Simulator, and Office Simulator, and Farming Simulator, and Truck Simulator. Do you want to know what all those things are? All those things are jobs. Every one of these games that seems to be really famous and popular on VR, which I've played and quite enjoy, are games where you just do mundane tasks. We're gamifying jobs.
But when you say like the VR thing, the most selling games on these are say workplace games or workplace simulators. It comes to what's coming to my mind is like it's still the Talking Tom thing again. Like people are doing what they do in real lives with VR, and because it's something new. Like they're trying something new. They're still want to go to work, so they just are looking at the work, like virtual work simulator thing, and be like, oh, this is funny or this is amusing. I go to work and I'm wearing a VR headset and I'm
so you think
in a simulation that is not still my work, but I'm still at workplace.
So you think that people play these games are so popular because it's almost ironic? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know.
Like,
no. What I'm trying to say is, I don't know if I'm using the right word, but people are just toying around with it and until they get bored and move on to the next thing.
Well, I think so as well, but I also think that there's a trend in the past 10 years almost. I don't really see a lot of farming games before that, at least not everywhere. But
Facebook was full of farming things.
Well, yeah, sure, but in terms of like that's different. I think from like what's coming out now. Like I think a lot of those farming games back then were like, you know, click and collect little farm things. I think nowadays it's more of a like you stick a headset on, you're in a genuine tractor, you have a genuine space, you have a genuine farm, you're taking up genuine space. And you got an actual farm going on. And then they're actually, you know, doing the job that a farmer would do on a day-to-day basis, selling their crops, making sure that they take care, you know, and there's like proper management and that's a genuine thing, you know? I think that I found that the real question I'm going to ask you is, do you think that these simulator games being used in VR, they're the highest selling thing? Do you think in a way that this normalizes capitalism? Do you think that having these games all be you doing jobs but in VR in a way starts to normalize capitalism? You're gamifying a mundane task. That mundane task is something that people get paid to do. It's not something people want to do. You know, filing this, filing that, farming this, driving this, fishing this, cooking that. People don't always enjoy these things. You know, people have hobbies of these things, but people who do it as a job probably don't enjoy it as much as you think. Now, is this some way normalizing capitalism? I think that it is, because if you think about it, you know, you have all these games that are making you do those tasks for free.
What's wrong with normalizing capitalism, man?
There's nothing wrong with normalizing capitalism if that's what you believe. Personally, I don't think that there's too much wrong with it. But do you think that that's normalizing capitalism? I think it is.
In what sense? Like, what? Who's trying to normalize capitalism? The people that made the game, or?
Well, like, it's not necessarily about the intent of it trying to normalize capitalism. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the effect of the game. Being a normalization of capitalism.
So you're talking about something that could happen, but is not the main intent of the game.
Well, yes. The main intent of the game is to entertain, and I think that most developers of Workplace Simulator, Office Simulator, I think there's like a Island Simulator, I think all the intention of those developers is, in my opinion, kind of a tech demo of showing how you can do these different things whilst also giving you some entertainment, having some fun, and I don't think the intention is ever to make you feel like you're really doing a job. I think, actually, in retrospect, playing Workplace Simulator, it's a goof, it's a spoof, it's a gaff, you know? You play it and it's not really supposed to be like, oh, filing. It's a goofy game, you have fun, it's lighthearted, and I think that posing the question of it being normalizing capitalism, I think for maybe Workplace Simulator, Office Simulator, I don't think that really works. But for fishing, trucking, train games, I think that there's two categories. I think that there's people who do it because they have a vested interest. I think some people are just like fishing. You know, I like fishing. I don't fish much, but I like to play fishing games for fun. You know, I play some truck games, not because I really like truck games, but sometimes you just want to listen to your own music, sit back and play a little game where you're driving a truck, because it's just it calms you down. It's a form of meditation to us, in a sense. And I think that a lot of these job games, fishing, cooking, workplace stuff, I think to a massive extent they are a form of meditation for a lot of people. I think that a lot of these games are not as deep. You know, I know that I even agreed with it normalizing capitalism. And I think that there's a lot of points that you could say that they do. But I also think that they're video games. I think that they're playing it because they're trying to get an escape from their work. And sometimes doing those jobs in game can satisfy you because they're not actually a really job. You know, sometimes it's the inert feeling to rebel from your work that makes you dislike work. It's the knowing that you're not maybe doing what you want to do. But playing these games at home, you chose to play that. You chose to do that. It has comedy added onto it. It has a goal, a purpose. Not a lot of people are farmers. You know, I doubt there's a lot of farmers playing Farmer Simulator because they do that all day. But I think there's a lot of office workers playing, you know, farming games. They're not farmers, they're office workers. But they can have that fun. They can play that dream. Even if they don't want to be a farmer, they can experience it and be like, that's quite fun. I like growing my little crops, taking care of my little land, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that those are some important things to think about. You know? So I think I got two more things to talk about. First, we're going to talk about the gamification of relationships, which is...
What's that?
Well, it's kind of... There's a lot of games coming out that are dating simulators. See, this isn't really something I'm quite familiar with, but we are learning it. Dating simulators, yeah. So a lot of these are... It's gamifying the idea of a relationship.
Yeah.
It's gamifying the idea of relationship. What is the purpose of gamifying the relationship? What is the purpose of Super Seducer and Friend AI and all these different games?
So they can use that to get, like, as an aid to help themselves in real life. That's what I assume. So? I mean, what else would you want to date a hot girl that's not real?
Hey, you make a good point. I never thought of it. I think you make a great point. I think a lot of people buying these dating simulators might be doing it for the practice, maybe to see how they do it. I never thought of that. That's a great point. I personally, my point would have been sometimes a young man
has needs
and would like to imitate those needs in a virtual realm and not worry about the repercussions coming back to kick, to bite them in the behind, But I think that's a great point. I think a lot of people might be playing these games because they are quite nervous young men, or they're nervous young women trying to figure out how to talk to guys and girls, which I do think is a bad thing, because I think a lot of people go on these things and they're like, oh, that's how I talk to women. I personally have a lot of genuine friends who are such, they love games, and I'm big into games. I can't name a game I haven't played, but seriously, I know a lot of people who think that flirting with a girl is like a video game, and they talk to these girls like that people in these dating simulators talk to these girls, and they think that that's okay. They think that it's normal, but really they're talking to them like they're either A, an object,
are we gonna name
B,
these friends
a child.
In class?
We're not going to name these friends, but there are certain people, and it's not, obviously I don't go to my school anymore. I don't even know. There's people I've met in the past, but yeah, no, I think that that's very important to separate reality from games. I think that's the most important thing to take away from this conversation, is that no matter how big VR gets, no matter how cool VR is, I think it's always important to separate reality from VR. I think it's okay to create virtual realities to live in and to enjoy yourself in and to have fun in, but I think it's also important to make sure that you get enough sunlight and experience the world outside, and not get too attached to things that don't really exist, And I think that even things that are to exist, real things that may cost money, even those things you shouldn't get too attached to. I think today we learned one thing, and that's give up your body and send your soul to heaven.
And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, and have a good Hanukkah.